Okay. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I am actually currently in Vermont, beautiful state. I've actually never been, so this is my first visit. And my family and I are having a ton of great time, like exploring all the great shops and downtowns here that Vermont has to offer. And this one happens to be very precious with the name Main and Mountain, up the road from us. So I thought I'd share a little bit of Vermont with you all today. But thanks for joining our second Main Street Collective monthly conversation. I'm Kate Giovanbattista, the founder of Beyond Maine. And today I'm joined with our guest expert, Salena Scardina of HeroCX, and we're going to dive into all things customer service as a differentiator for your business. Just to kind of recap a little bit of, what Beyond Maine is, if you're not super familiar with us. We are a technology platform that's connecting community and commerce. We really focus on trying to create sustainable cities through creating online destinations for shopping local or supporting your community. And through this work, we're aiming to help recirculate money back into local economies at a higher rate. And so that's kind of what we're all about. But with that, we know that as business owners or leaders in your community, you have a lot of balls you're juggling, and there's a lot of different functions you kind of have to become expert yourself in. And so what we try to do as a community is bring together those experts and individuals to help us kind of share learnings. And the purpose for our, I'm going to just mute some of our, hang on one second, just so everyone can hear a little bit better. All right, I think we got the background noise there. Great, okay. So why are we all here? We want to foster connection, build a community, share learnings, opportunities with each other, gather suggestions and feedback, and just share through our connected knowledge as a community of small businesses and neighborhoods across the country. All right. And so these calls do take place every month, the second Tuesday. So if you can remember that easily, but if you signed up through our Eventbrite link, you should have gotten kind of the Zoom link access for all of the future calls as well. And so those will keep updating with information. So if you keep this, handy, you'll always be able to access it on the second Tuesday of each month at 10 a.m. So today's kind of agenda, I'll just kind of quickly highlight where we left off last week and some intro insights from the consumer side that we discussed last week. And then I'm going to let Salena take it away. So the state of Maine, what we discussed last week was really some key trends that we're seeing across not just Main Street, but kind of the landscape in general. So there is this theme of localization that's beginning to take form again, where we saw a real big, for several decades, the globalization trend. Now we're starting to see kind of that shrinking back, that pendulum swinging again the other way, back to localization of focused initiatives. Pervasive e-commerce, that ATAWAD, it just means that customers want to connect anytime, anywhere, from any device. So that's just sort of something to keep in mind with any implementation of technology or any process that you might be implementing. Is it helping to achieve that kind of end goal, that key trend we're seeing? That plays into the connected economy as well as just omni-channel operations in general. So how is everything you're doing, every touch point you have with a customer, working in tandem with each other and complementing each other? So I thought this was an interesting Wall Street Journal, quote from an article that they did where they were talking about, consumers and just sort of like the sentiment, how they're feeling, through 2021 and or through 2020 and into 2021 and kind of what we can expect. And so, their tensions are heightened, which you've probably experienced, which is why we're here kind of talking about the topic that we are today. But, there's a lot of change that's taken place over the last year. And so some key things to keep in mind are, the customers they're going to be a little bit more demanding. They're going to be a little bit more anxious. They're dealing with a lot of change, just like each of us is. But they are finding that they're gravitating towards brands, where there's increased activism associated with it, where their values are aligned, where there have new options or ways to explore them and experiences that they can garner, maybe more in the digital world as well as the physical world, where they can't always, interact as frequently as they have been in the past. And so, these three kind of key aspects, I think, really play into what we're going to talk about today, that digital reality, kind of connecting the digital and the physical. Consumers have way more flexibility now with work and life than they have before. And so how does that play into how we communicate and how we talk and how we interact? And then just their overall reevaluation of their spending habits. There's a lot more thoughtfulness, a lot more consciousness that's taking place. And so all of these are sort of bundled up into what we're seeing, take place on our main streets and also in the digital world as well. So with that, we're going to kind of dive into our expert session today and discuss like customer service as a differentiator and what does that really mean? And so we have the great honor of having Salena Scardina here from HeroCX. Salena has, if I'll introduce her quickly, she'll give you her background, but she's spent the last 25 years working with national brands, really leading customer experience and support and service and really excelling in this industry. She and I had the pleasure of working together while we were at Vera Bradley, and I can tell you Vera Bradley was always ranked highest in customer service and support across every customer interaction, whether it was the direct to consumer, whether it was our wholesale channel, our direct partners. And so she really led a great team there, and I got to witness that firsthand, and has gone on to work with other national brands and helping them kind of lead their hero customer service. So with that, I will stop share and I will let Salena take the stage. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Kate, and happy to be with you all today. And clearly, as business owners, there's a lot of needs that you have. And I have been a business owner a couple of times in the past, so very excited to definitely spend the time with you. So I'm going to take you through a little prepared presentation, but keep in mind, if you have any questions through this, make sure you put it in the chat, raise your hand, or just, ask. But I'll, Kate, if you can enable participant screen sharing, that would be one thing that allowed me to share.
There you go.
Okay, wonderful. So let me go ahead and just jump right into it. But very excited today to spend time with you and really talk about customer service as a business differentiator. If you are into, let me go ahead and minimize myself there, put me in the corner. If you are a TED Talk watcher, you would go onto YouTube, and I did a TED Talk on the same topic of customer service really as a business differentiator. But that quote that Kate put up really made me think about something that recently, the Starbucks CEO said that, convenience is now becoming a need state. And so you are feeling this, and with that convenience comes this idea of service, and it's really evolved over the years. So we're going to have a really great time today. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know, or we can put it in the chat. Let's go ahead and talk about our agenda. It's going to be completely focused on the customer. So a little bit about my background. What is this concept of HeroCX? What's the state of customer service and who's doing it really well? And through all of this, we're in business for this idea to, gain new customers and retain the ones we've worked so hard to get, and then win more customers in terms of their spend and how much and how sticky they are with us. So this is really why we're all in business, and we're also in business for our purpose-driven missions, work-life balance, and those things that drive us. So either we're doing this for someone in an organization or for ourselves. To understand really some of the guiding principles around net promoter and satisfaction, customer satisfaction, two metrics I look at frequently. And when service works well, and we know it works well, and then when it doesn't, I'm going to provide you with some tips for solving some of these service related issues, things that I've seen in my career, and then we'll allow some time for questions. So a little bit about my background. I am a lifelong learner. I'm the first in my family to go to college. Always brought up in an entrepreneurial household. I think I had my first business doing lawn maintenance at 13 years old, cleaning people's homes, and really love this idea of having my own business. I went on to get my MBA, and then when I did have my own business and with HeroCX here, I did take a Harvard certification on kind of this idea of entrepreneurship. I've worked for some amazing companies, like Kate said, McDonald's Corporation, where eventually I led the US Customer Experience and Insights, Vera Bradley, Sweetwater Sound, which just hit $1 billion. They're a company here in Indiana that's focused on the music industry, and Herf Jones. As a business owner, though, I've worked across multiple industries. Hanes Brands, Rebel, which is a POS company you may be familiar with, is one of our clients, Autodesk, Helen of Troy, Crate and Barrel, and many others. And through all of that, I did spend about 10 years teaching business and computer courses at a couple colleges. So through this career journey, serving business owners, franchisees, sales partners, being a business owner, I realized that throughout this career of business and commerce, you are a teacher to others, and you have to become and stay a student of business. And as Kate showed, the trends that are changing are really important to stay connected to. So these are really different companies that I've been involved with, at least 15 companies that I've worked with in my career. And there's something that I love. I heard a term recently, and it's really one that's resonated. There's pattern recognition for customer service success. So the widget may be different, the offering or the consulting or the service might be different, but there's actually patterns that you'll see that are set a business owner up or employees up for success, and actually helps build kind of loyalty in this idea of being sticky with an organization. So that's my background. And I want to talk a minute about this idea of the hero. So I created this name simply because I felt like most business was focused on their needs first, and what their needs were typically not necessarily always the needs of the customer. And so I took a different approach. The idea of HeroCX is that this customer is on a journey and they're trying to do something. They're trying to solve. They're trying to have a nice lunch with their daughter before she goes off to college, which is the state I'm in this week. Or they're trying to find the perfect dress for the wedding, or they're trying to have the perfect wedding, or they're trying to fill a need or have an experience, and that piece of it is really important. So when I step out of my role and I think about this customer in this hero sense, or as the center of everything that we do, it changes my perspective. I told Kate that I'm in the middle of writing a book and it will get done one day, but there's an activity that I do once a year, usually in the fall around Customer Service Week. And I go through this activity and I really say to everyone is my customer. So I go through the day, I go to grocery stores or I do whatever, and I try to treat everybody I engage with as my customer. So it's a really different mind shift, right? The person who's actually packing your groceries, engaging with them, what is their name, getting your payments ready, things like that. How can you make their lives easier? This idea of customer is important. And sometimes we shift as business owners and we get so focused on running the business that we sometimes lose the focus of doing the business and focusing on the customer as the center of kind of the story that we're involved in. And there's more and more, I'd have to say, literature and descriptions around this idea of the hero is actually the customer. So I like to always know where the state of customer service is. And I've been in the industry a really long time. And I remember when the phone rang and we answered it. And now we have things like automation, self-service. We have our expectations set and met by companies. But I thought these were some interesting stats to look at. So 90% of customer interactions today are assisted with some type of automation. And that automation could be taking that credit card and just, putting that NFC chip right on the reader. That automation could be something paying with your app that gives you points. That automation could be something that's beyond just using sort of this human connection. So that's a pretty high number. And that trend we'll see continue to grow. We'll also see levels of automation added. And then there's this really great organization, the University of Michigan, America. They have the American Customer Satisfaction Index, which has been around 4 years, and they really measure satisfaction with products and services in the US. So 75% of customers pre-COVID were highly satisfied or satisfied, but that means that 25% weren't. And that idea of satisfaction is really important. And that may not look like a high number. However, that has trended higher over the last few years. Now, COVID has really shifted that. And when I do send you this information, you will have a reference slide of the different articles. And recently, with the high availability of positions in the service industry, and the unemployment rate where it's at, and there's sort of a demand for more service workers, we're seeing that customers had a level of expectation before COVID, and post-COVID, or the state we're in right now, isn't always met. And there's some obviously some, and that equation between the customer and the service provider, there's starting to be more friction. But I will tell you that satisfaction scores tend to be higher for products than services. So as good as we get in customer service, we tend to score that slightly lower than products, which don't always have an opinion and have a personality back and communicate with us. I thought this was interesting that the phone is still a primary channel. So if something goes wrong or I want to know something, 60% of customers choose the phone to engage with a brand's customer service. So if I need to reach out to customer service, or I need to call or connect with you, I'll use the phone versus email. And so that's a majority of the channel today. And a customer is 4 times more likely to switch to a competitor if the problem is service-based. So if I purchase this pair of glasses, and let's say there's something wrong with the pair of glasses from your establishment, this product is failing in some way. If I engage with you and you resolve the situation, I'm less likely to leave your organization. But if it's a service-based, meaning there was rude employees or I could not connect, I'm more likely 4 times to leave if it's based on a service issue. Companies with high levels of satisfaction grow revenue 2.5 times faster than their industry peers. So satisfaction in an experience does grow revenue faster. And recently I was part of a group of women in retail leadership, and post-COVID, clearly customer experience demands and requests more transparency and higher expectation for information. We may have to tell our customers 2 or 3 times the same thing. And I'll go in a little bit later in the presentation how the brain works and why during COVID it's important to do that. So we all know kind of what that ideal customer service state is. And we could all sit here and come up with really great attributes, like listening, anticipating the needs, solving for whatever that need is before the customer requests it, a friendly, personable approach, flexibility, without having a long, exhausting wait, without repeating ourselves. And the fact that you know who I am because I've shopped with you before, and using technology and all of my preferences to be readily available to you so you can serve me faster and better. So we know what that looks like. And the reason we know that is because we are customers ourselves. And today we are comparing our experiences to not the experience of a similar brand or a similar industry. We're comparing it to customer experiences across the board. I am sure in your business at some point you must have heard well, Amazon will do this for me, or you must have heard a comparison to some larger, more global organization. It's not because it could be the exact same service or product. It's the fact that we've seen an elevation of just offering in general. And what's changed that for us really has been, our accessibility to digital innovation and mobile technology has really just catapulted. And with that, there's expectations now that everybody should be able to deliver that. And that's not always the case. So I want to walk through two really important metrics, and there's two that I really focus on. One is called Net Promoter Score, and you may already be familiar with this, and the other is customer satisfaction. So I've worked many, many years on surveys and asking customers their opinions. And if you go through a drive-through today in any McDonald's restaurant, chances are you'll get a receipt survey with a few questions on there and then an offer to get a free product. That was a project that I worked on for years. And there's a really important question, especially for businesses that are growing or on Main Street. And that's this idea of likelihood to recommend. So the Net Promoter Score is really based on one concept and one question. How likely are you to recommend us, this business, to a friend or colleague? Now, if you think about this question and you want to know more about it, it'll be in the resources, but there's a great Harvard Business Review article on how this question was formulated as a key indicator to growth. So if the question is asked, how likely are you to recommend Beyond Main to your friends or colleagues that also run businesses? If someone answers that question from 0 through 6, those are considered detractors, brand detractors. If someone answers that question 9 or 10, those are brand promoters. They're in love with your brand. And if someone doesn't really think too highly one way or the other, they're called passives. So those are those that answer 7 or 8. And every time I've joined a company or I've shared this, it's been fascinating to see the likelihood to recommend. Now, let me talk to you about certain brands. It's public information that 90% of homes in the United States own some sort of Hanes brands products, right? So they own Champion, Bally, Maidenform, et cetera. So the likelihood to recommend to somebody to buy that product is really not going to be as impactful since 90% of homes own something in their home from Hanes. But if you had, Susie's Cafe, and it's a one of a kind, and it's a unique concept, and it's located on downtown, USA, America, and you're interested to know how likely someone will recommend that location. This is where this question becomes very powerful. Now, here's the thing. You can over-engineer a survey, and I've done it. I've created surveys with 50 questions. I've created surveys with 1 and 2 or 3 questions. But imagine if you could just on the receipt that someone signs, ask that question, or on your app, just ask that question. So you want to make sure that it's frictionless when you ask the question, and then you will look at the answers. So the Net Promoter Score is simply the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. Now, there's certain industries where the Net Promoter Score is or tends to be relatively lower. I guess you can think of some of those industries like the utility company or some cable providers, although Comcast has seen their Net Promoter Score really increase over the last few years based on focusing on service. So the utilities, et cetera. So it's well known that companies like Southwest or Amazon tend to have a Net Promoter Score closer to 80%, right? That score is a great score. But then I've actually seen companies have a negative, meaning there are more, oops, sorry about that. Sorry, let me go ahead. And I think I lost you. There we go. So I've seen companies actually have more detractors and actually be in a negative compared to having promoters. And then I've also worked for a company, I won't share the name, where we were able to get the Net Promoter Score to over 90. And that was just an incredible brand. So that's the idea of Net Promoter Score. And I think if you're not asking it today, it might be a good question to ask. And then as you change your business or grow your business, if you're able to put in enhancements that improve that score, you'll have a baseline. So let me talk to you about another one of my favorite metrics, and that is effort. So effort is really a great score. And then there's satisfaction. So some people will actually measure the effort. How difficult or how easy was it for you to do business with us? And there's no magic formula around that, but that's a question that you can ask. And then there's the question of satisfaction. So how satisfied were you with lunch service today? So if you think about that, that's just a basic 10-point question. I've seen it as a 7-point question option. I've seen it as a 5-point question. But let me look at the idea of customer satisfaction. How satisfied were you with the lunch service today? How satisfied were you with the purchase? Most folks who score between 1 to 6 on this are usually not really satisfied. And then you'll have the folks that were kind of satisfied, but kind of neutral, the 7 and 8. And then you'll have those that are extremely satisfied, the 9 or 10. So in the book, The Power of Moments, which is a great book to read if you're interested in creating really exceptional experiences for your customers. And we actually do a workshop, a couple-hour workshop on this topic. The Power of Moments is a really great book to read. It's not a customer service book per se. The concept is the power of moments is really how to create extraordinary experiences, but it can be applied to your business. So when we looked at this question about improving service, how satisfied were you with the lunch service today at our restaurant? Plan A would say, let's take the 1 through 6 and let's move them up to 7 to 8, make them, kind of happy. But plan B says, let's take the kind of happy folks and let's make them like really raving fans. So in the book, there's a great story about where people put their effort as business owners. And according to the Forrester study in the book, plan A would eliminate unhappy customers and move them to satisfied. So I feel like that needs to happen in some ways. But unless someone complains, we don't always focus on their sort of experience, because we usually give those people that complain sort of the moat. Who wrote the book? Chip and Dan Heath. Thank you for asking that, Meg. I appreciate that. So Chip and Dan Heath wrote The Power of Moments, and they also wrote, Dan Heath, one of the brothers, wrote Upstream. And then if you really want a great book on change, they also, Chip and Dan wrote a good book called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. So as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of Chip and Dan Heath as authors, especially around business. But thanks for asking the question. Looks like we have one more other question in the chat. Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for weighing in on that. So let's go back to the study. How satisfied were you with the lunch service today at our restaurant? So we know if we focus on the people who complain the most unhappy, we'll move them over to satisfied, or 7 to 8. But we don't really go to the 7, 8, and we don't spend a lot of time with them, and we don't really go to the 9 and 10. So here's the interesting thing that we learned. 80% of business owners put effort towards plan A. Let's get them out of complaining. But what we found when we put some effort in plan B, where we move people from satisfied to highly positive, they'll spend 9 times more with us. And that's based on a Forrester study. Well, that would go to reason, because we talked about Net Promoter, talking about that group as passives. Well, the passives, we need to make them raving fans because they're not complaining, but we don't look at that always. And this is where I think you as business owners can really make some strides. So every day I take a look at how I can build my relationships at work or through my business and to make them stronger. This week, I actually have to write a few thank you cards out for kindness and gifts and other things that folks have sent to me. I'll also, like you mentioned, this book, The Power of Moments, and asked about the author. I probably have gifted that book at least 50 times over the last couple of years because I feel like it's such a great read. And that type of book or that type of gift giving or even handwriting a note is a way to thank your customers and move them from 7 to 8 to 9 or 10. So when service works well, that's great, but until it doesn't. So this is like really great because everything's humming along. You all are running your books. I know you're waiting for the receivables. You have, this constant, ebb and flow of payroll and other things that you're doing. You're running your expense reports. You're trying to manage your business and do the business. And through all of this, service works and then it doesn't. So I'm going to walk through some ways that you can start thinking about the customer differently and easy ways that you can start focusing on this idea of a service opportunity or repairing the relationship. There's study after study that shows if we resolve a customer situation and we engage in it, so they will actually be more loyal than if the issue did not happen in the first place. So I look as a complaint is actually a gift or an opportunity. I changed my mindset years ago. I used to complain about the customer complaints I was getting. And then I remember I was a customer service representative and that was my job. And I started to look at the complaints as an opportunity to build the brand, repair the brand, because no matter what we say on this call, when we all get off this call, something is going to happen and something is going to fail for the experience. And we have to be ready for that. Then we're going to talk about communication. It's probably 75% of the time the root cause of a complaint or of a complaint resolution not working. We're going to talk about actively listening, really how to show empathy, and then tough customer situations. I don't think there's a customer situation that I can come across that I'm not able to handle, but that has taken years and years of practice and trial and error. So why are customers so challenging? Because customers are just like us, especially in this country. Especially during and after COVID, we are emotional. Whether we like it in a good way or a bad way, we get excited, we get upset. We're emotional people. And in other countries, and I've traveled in other countries, the emotion is not as high as it is here in the United States. And we are demanding. We move fast. I tend to think I talk fast, and we're impatient. And what's made that impatient, like I said, that need stated convenience. And I heard a comedian once say that he was looking at somebody and they couldn't get this information on their phone. And he said, well, give it a second. It's got to go up to space and back. Like we've become so impatient and instantly we want at our fingertips something done for us. And sometimes we don't think about the effort that has to go into creating or making or evolving that product or experience. And this is why we're going to talk about the reason why. And we multitask. I hope right now I have your full undivided attention. And usually at this point in a presentation, I'll ask a question like, what company did I create a receipt survey for? And then I'll see if anyone knows that answer. Or do I have a son or daughter going to college this weekend? So if you were listening, then you would probably have heard some of that. And great, thanks, McDonald's. And I have a daughter going to college this weekend. So the reason why I do that is just to see, I bet you could have been multitasking. Customers are just like us. They're independent and they're knowledgeable. Well, I just looked up here and your return policy shows this online, but I'm trying to return this and you're not allowing me to. So that is kind of who customers are, and that is who we are. So let's continue on. I love this quote. Technology has made us more knowledgeable, made customers more knowledgeable what they're buying and how their decisions relate to their organization needs. Customers are more self-confident and they know how to make use of their knowledge. So I went into a doctor's appointment recently with my mom, and I had done some research on stints and I wanted to know everything I could. I wrote all these notes about it, and I was asking about the different types of stints and how they were going to use them. And she's fine. She's 79. And the doctor looked over at me and he said, "Are you a doctor?" And I said, "No, I just did a lot of research." So there's so much information now at our fingertips, and customers are becoming more knowledgeable. But then what that does, it sets expectations that could be confusing at times. And where we tend to fail sometimes into resolution is really around the communication. This is George Bernard Shaw. I love this quote: "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that has taken place." So here's the situation that most of us are in when something goes wrong. We are running our business, we are actively doing tasks, and something goes off the rails. And that may be something small that then will get bigger, or something really big that we can make smaller. But nonetheless, there's an important way to go after understanding when a complaint, a bad rating, or something happens. And that is, first, remove all emotion out of it. So I used to program when I was younger. And if you know anything about programming or binary code, it's literally ones and zeros. So ones and zeros are really the basis of programming. And there's zero emotion before artificial intelligence, of course, in this idea of ones and zeros. So I started to tell myself that I needed to understand what the ones and zeros, or what the facts were. And I started to realize that most of the customer service issues that we were having were emotion based. They were taken personally by either the customer or the employee, and there was a lack of communication. And nothing that I'm going to talk about today is something that you couldn't apply to general areas of your own life. But the single biggest problem sometimes is that we think communication has taken place. But with communication, there's a sender and there's a receiver. There's a sender that has a message. It goes through to get decoded by the receiver. This is why we shouldn't ever share anything that's negative on text or email. We shouldn't even share something probably that could be perceived as negative. For example, "I just wanted to let you know that your order could be picked up at 5 p.m. today." Could be perceived as, "Yeah, I just want to let you know your order could be picked up at 5 p.m. today." Well, do you see the difference? Unless you hear my voice, you don't know if it's a positive or a negative. So typically that's why I'll add a little emoticon, or "great to hear from you," or "good morning," exclamation point. "We're excited that you're going to be picking your order up today. It'll be available 5 p.m. So communication is one of the key areas that I see that fail. And the other piece of the communication, like we said, there's a sender and there's a receiver. In the communication equation, active listening is an area that I see is probably the biggest fail. Active listening is the opposite of passive listening. The person you're talking with might be technically be hearing some of what you're saying, but they're not mentally engaged. And this is why when I create meetings with folks, I create 10 or 15-minute meetings, not an hour if I can avoid it. And the reason I do that is I want their active attention. I want them to listen. And I don't want them to think about what they're going to say next until they've actively listened. Passive listening is kind of like in an air shot. And they've done studies on certain brains, and women can do that really good. They can be in a conversation and be listening to something on the television, and they can be actively engaged in both. It's just the way our brains are wired. But that's not active listening. I used to think I was a great multitasker until I realized when I stopped doing one thing and I focused on listening or the actual conversation, how much more I got out of that situation. And that's where I started to really not be a proponent of multitasking, unless it's something like the laundry is on and I'm on my computer, which you can multitask very easily doing that. So this idea of active listening is really probably the key to trying to understand why customer situations fail. So here's some tips for active listening. First, actively listen. So if you're actively listening, you hear what someone is saying and you actually comprehend it. My husband said that to me this last night. I was doing something, I can't remember what it was, in the kitchen, and he said, "What did I just say?" And I was able to recite it perfectly. because he didn't think I was listening because I didn't have eye contact. So commit to listening. If someone is speaking to you and you are in a retail location or something, stop what you're doing. And you can even say this phrase: listening to you right now is the most important thing I'm going to do right now. Because people say, oh, sorry to interrupt you. No, listening to you is the most important thing I'm going to do right now. That tells the communicator that this is front and center. And then commit to listening. That's body language. That's also making some verbal nods. Oh, okay. I missed that last section. Did you say that it was 42 feet? And then you actually reconfirm. And what you want to do is gather the facts. If someone is upset or happy or neutral, but don't gather the emotion. Right now, you're in fact-finding mode. So many times we connect to the emotion of the situation and not the facts. So remember the saying from the show in the 80s or the 70s called Just the Facts, Ma'am? We just want the facts. And then actively acknowledge and make verbal nods, and then answer questions without jumping ahead. Because here's what we have to remember. A customer is going through this for the first time, or maybe the second time, and this is the 50th time you've seen it. You already know the answer to that, and you know how the story is going to end. But they don't. So if they have to go through the journey of asking questions, don't jump ahead. Let them get there, stair-stepping through each of the pieces of the experience. And then restate or paraphrase what you said, what you heard. So if I heard you right, not the screaming or the yelling or the complaining. So if I heard you right, you wanted the cake at 5 p.m., but yet we did not have it ready until 7. Just paraphrasing the facts, and think of them as non-emotional things, just as occurrences that happen, and more of ones and zeros. And then avoid interrupting the customer. Sometimes a customer has to vent to be heard, and it has nothing to do with you. Perhaps they had 52 things that went terrible, and we don't know any of that. But the one experience we have is when they intersected with us and they need to vent. And you probably said to yourself, wow, this isn't that big of an issue to yourself, but we don't know what that person is facing, especially now during COVID. I've overcompensated with kindness and just listening, and then just be genuine. So the biggest thing that I can feel or hear is when somebody's not genuine. My identity recently got stolen, and it was a pretty big deal. And I had to go through many different agencies. And at one point, one person kept saying, sorry for the inconvenience. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'm like, well, my identity was stolen. There's not an inconvenience here. It's like pretty traumatic. But it felt very not genuine. And when you go through the customer journey, I want you to become your customer. Go from the very beginning, from onboarding. And what onboarding means essentially is like, how do I use your business? I went to a spa once, and I did not realize that all these great amenities were part of the spa, where I could use all of their very expensive product, and then I could use their special steam showers, etc. And I went through the whole experience. And then after I was ready to leave the spa, someone had mentioned that they couldn't wait for the steam area. And I was like, I didn't even know that that existed, but I wanted to onboard and understand that. So think about the customer journey from onboarding to purchase. And then the very end of that is the idea that the purchase is not over after it happens, but they could return. And I told Kate, I'm going to finish the book, and there's a chapter called You Love Me Until I Return. Like, we have to embrace the customers that return, and not in a way that something went wrong. We may have not qualified them for the sale up front or upstream, but that customer journey is incredibly important. And if it doesn't work and there's an issue, you have to activate with empathy. And this is an easy 3-part empathy calculation. And I've been using this for years, and it's very easy. Understand me, validate me, and care for me. So it's really easy. Listen and ask questions to show you understand my perspective. And my perspective, just understand me. I come from a different background. I come from a different, diverse experiences, but understand me and where I came from. I may be 20 years older or younger than you, so understand me. Secondly, validate me and my emotions. You hear me, and my emotions may not be valid to you because I'm acting really absurd, or I'm acting, making a big deal about something that's small to you, but validate me and my emotions. My emotions are valid to me. And then care for me. Seek to solve whatever that is, just care for me. You understand what happened, and then show me you care. And use statements like, solving this for you today is really important. Let me see what I can do. And we're not going to use statements like, well, you'll have to fill out this form, but we will use statements like, if you complete this form, I will be able to get you that replacement much quicker. It helps us go through the system and update it versus you'll have to complete this form. So in the care could be understanding the why. So understand me, validate me, and care for me. So why are solving customer situations so tough? Because our brain is human and it works in a very interesting way. And I think if you understand this, and I've understood this for years, and it's helped me work with customer situations. We got the reptilian brain. So this is inside, it kind of controls our heart rate and breathing and balance. We don't do much for that brain. It does its own thing. And then we have the neocortex. If you think about a fist, it's the entire thing on the top. It's calm, it's healthy, and it controls our other two little brains, the limbic and the reptilian brain. Right now, all of us are probably in a neocortex. But then we get highly stressed or worried, and then it starts to call the unhealthy brain or the limbic brain. And when we yell and we scream, or we get emotionally charged, or we just get frustrated, we're in the limbic brain, in the limbic system. Your customers are also in those systems. So when you're in the neocortex, like we are now, we can think rationally. We have a sense of time. Well, last week I did this. This week I'm doing this. We can show empathy and understanding, and we can process language. We can process language up to the 8th or 12th grade level, and we can use higher order thinking skills. We can make connections, and we're able to rationalize. But when we're upset, and the COVID has done this to a lot of customers, we're impulsive, angry, and we're frustrated. We can't process our consequences. If I do X, Y will happen. And then we have a hard time remembering facts and memory and focusing. And we think from an emotional platform. Everything feels irrational. And we understand one moment of time. And that's right now. Remember the last 3 times we were in here into this retail location and I had great experiences? No, I can't remember that. I can remember right now I'm angry. So we have to get our customers to go from the limbic brain back to the neocortex. And it can happen in milliseconds. And you can also go milliseconds into an upset phase. So there's ways that you can work with your customers if they're in the limbic thinking. And really the first thing is, like everything, if you talk in a, not a overly slow voice, but a slow voice that's calm, and in small sentences, it's easily understood by somebody in the limbic situation where they're upset. And then if you show kindness, so what is the worst thing you can do is have a customer that's in the limbic situation, and then you have an employee in a limbic situation. Now no one's getting out of there. That whole ship's going down. But if you stay in your neocortex and you really practice this, and I say practice, this has been years of this type of work. And then I feel very successful in myself if I don't get upset and I stay very calm. And I kind of recall where the customer's at. And sometimes customers need to vent. Now, what I have done in retail situations is I would say to the customer, maybe we can sit over here so I can listen to you. And what that does is take them away from the central part of a store or what have you, or on a phone call. Let me go to this back room where it's quieter so I could focus on what you're saying. So in that situation, we have to focus on what the customer need is. And again, even if it's not valid, remember, understand me, validate me. And then avoid, when the customer is upset, answering challenge questions. So what is a challenge question? Well, there's information seeking, like what are your store hours? And then there's a challenge question. How did you even become a business owner? So do you see, you actually want to avoid and completely ignore the challenge question, because if you do that, there's no answer that's going to give a challenge question the right answer. I had someone the other day say something like, do you really understand how this happens in business? So that was a challenge question. But where's the best way that I could deliver a complaint on my experience? That's not a challenge question. That's information seeking. So keep in mind, sometimes when people are in a limbic state, they want you to join into that state. And the idea is not to do that. And review the facts and reserve judgment. We are not in a situation to judge. If my card, in fact, declined the other day, it's a corporate card and it declined and it's a brand new card. And I could not believe how rude the waitress was to me. She's like, this card does not work. This declined. And I'm like, well, it's a brand new card. And it's probably, and I just gave her another card, right? I mean, there was plenty of balance and I'd never used the card. But the point was that was a judgment call she made on me, not knowing my income or my ability to pay. And then speak in slow, calming tones. And then always sincerely apologize. Now, we don't apologize in our culture, and I'll tell you why. We don't apologize because it shows that we're guilty, that we somehow have to have our ego affected, and we don't apologize the right way, right? So all an apology does is say, I understand that there's some pain that you're going through, and I acknowledge that. I may not be the cause of it, but I acknowledge it. And that's really important, this apology. Sounding sincere when you apologize can be difficult if you focus on the fault. No, it could be the customer's fault, but they still have valid feelings. So you can focus on the feelings. Your apology will sound much more heartfelt. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Let me see what I can do to help. Does it say I caused it? And even if I didn't cause it, if we apologize more, that step of empathy could go a long way. And be specific, dig deep to understand why the customer is upset, right? Maybe this customer is in the middle of a really nasty divorce. Maybe this customer is having some food insecurity. Maybe this customer is, like a lot of Americans, impacted by housing right now. So there may be a situation where someone is upset and you really have to dig deep to understand that. Well, you're upset too, because you also have some challenges with running your business. But at that moment, you're focusing on the customer. And make it personal. Every apology should be unique to the situation. A blanket, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, loses so much of its sincerity. I'm sorry that happened. Or I once experienced the same thing and I know what that feels like. Just that connection and that apology will go a huge way. So follow up your apology with a solution. So if it is, I'm sorry that happened, and here's something that we can do to solve that, that is kind of your action to solve. Now, I will tell you, in any situation, especially if somebody's in the limbic brain, customers want two options, even if you know option one is the best option. So why do customers want two options? Because they think that they have a choice. And they do, and they're in control, which is what they need to feel. So I had a customer once, and they bought a very expensive item, and the item was about $7,000, and they were not satisfied with the item, and rightly so. There was something probably defective with it. So I said to the person, I'm so sorry that happened. I can send you this item overnight with signature required, and you'll get that at your doorstep before 10:30, or I would be happy to buy you a direct flight to come to our retail location. You can pick it out yourself to make sure that it works the way you want it to work. And we'll buy you a plane ticket at no cost. Now, those are two options. I had a feeling the customer was going to go with option of having me send the product overnight at no charge, and they did. But because I gave an option and a choice, the customer's entire demeanor changed, and they pick that option. Now they may pick that unusual option. And if they would have, I would have had made good on that option. And then I probably would have had a great relationship and maybe a meal with that customer and made them stronger to the brand. So with that, I know we only have 5 minutes left. I know we covered a lot of material. I'm at your service here. This is my contact information. And again, I'll send this to you with some of the resources I mentioned. Are there any specific situations or any comments that you have on the material that we talked about today?
Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to just verbally ask your question, or you can type it in the chat as well. This was really great, like such great information and great reminders of Meg's giving us the thumbs up.
Did any of that resonate with you, with some customer situations that you've had? Anything that was new that you heard? Because we've been human beings for years, talking, engaging with each other. So any thoughts there?
Yes, I am a retail employee at Club Pilates currently, and we actually just got a complaint recently that we might have missed the ball in communication, and you were talking about communication, and I was like, wow, that is kind of exactly what happened. So I was talking to this lady, and she had a free intro class with us, and I had called her, and she asked a question about some type of fee. So I was like, okay, I'll get back to you on that. So I ended up texting her that information, and she said, that's okay, cool. And then I said, well, if you ever want to call back to, sign up for a membership, please give us a call. I'll be here until this time. But if not, you can call on Monday. I ended up not being able to work until like Thursday the next week. So literally that same day, I came back. She had submitted her complaint, and my coworker was like, that girl you were talking about, she just submitted a complaint. And I was like, what happened? She said, we thought we missed the ball and not communicating with her and getting back with her. And my last text message to her was, give us a call on Monday if you can't call us today. So I was so confused on why she thought we missed the ball on communicating with her. But I guess I could have just like told my coworkers like, hey, reach out to her if she doesn't reach out on Monday. So that's why I was like, okay, I definitely could have done something better. And then also thanks for reminding me about sending notes and like little gifts, because I was taught that. I'm also I just graduated as an occupational therapy student, and after clinicals we were taught to, send our supervisors like thank you notes and little gifts and stuff like that. So thinking about that and how I want to communicate that to the owner for when we send out like our stuff from the Beyond main page, maybe write handwritten notes or add a little coupon or like a bring a friend to a class coupon or something. So thanks for that, because it really reminded me of something that I already knew.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that feedback and that communication, the text, when you look at it, explaining, well, I work on Thursdays and Mondays. So if I'm not here, a little bit extra and explaining the why behind that. I took a class this morning at 6. I'm now into like bar classes, and I'm crazy about bar classes. And this morning, the woman came up to me. There was only 5 of us. It was a rainstorm. And she said, are you Salena? And I said, yes. And she said, well, welcome. I see you've taken a few classes. I think I've taken 5 or 6. But the fact that she came up to me, called me by name, recognized that I wasn't a newbie, even though she didn't see me. So she must have looked at my history in there. And I felt different than if she would have said nothing, because clearly those 4 women had taken this class together before. And that was the first time I took the 6 a.m. class. So that kind of communication, again, is just a great way to build the relationship. And then we have to think about the journey and then where we can insert these possible communication points. And then, I kept hearing that they had these special socks. And then I eventually went online to buy them. I would have liked for them to say, hey, we finally have our socks and you've been asking for these bar socks for weeks. And I think that's the small little things that we can do. But thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts or questions?
Go for it.
Hi, should I just jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
Okay, so I am a Main Street manager, and I did invite a few of our businesses to join on, and I guess they couldn't figure it out. I'm going to pass along a couple of those books, especially the Extraordinary Experience. We have a lot of beauty salons, and they're all crazy busy, but I definitely think that that's one area that a bunch of them should really understand better. My takeaway, I guess, on it is I am forever just blasting out directions and, you have to do this and get me that and all this kind of stuff with department heads at town hall and business owners and vendors. And I inevitably at 10 o'clock at night when I'm still working, forget something. And I just had, while you were talking, the mayor's secretary, like, you forgot something, whatever. And I did. And she's great at proofreading. And I was non-emotional, definitely an emotional girl, and just kind of took that out of the play and just said, you're right, here's the information, I'm going to get it to you, can you post it? And so I find that in that I'm not dealing with actual businesses and with products, but the personalities with all the folks that I deal with. It's all the same, tricks that you just laid out that will, help us. And the listening part, I'm hard of hearing. So when people say listen, I'm like, try to really listen. So I thought it was great. I would love to hear more about you and follow you. So if there's more information that I guess I missed about all things you, I would like to see that. And I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, I'll give Kate the deck that you guys can have. Obviously, you can share any of this. There's nothing magical. If you have better customer service, I'm happy. And then I'll have a resource page of good YouTube or books that I recommend. And then again, this Power of Moments is really a great experience. We can do a workshop on that, very short, but it goes through and says really how do we make these customers sticky. So I've never advertised my business, and it's always been word of mouth, and it's really grown from just exceptional service. So thank you so much, Kate.
No, thank you for taking the time to share this great knowledge on customer experience and support. I think the one thing that I'm going to take away today, and I hope you all do as well, is that complaints are an opportunity, right? So just create the opportunity from the complaint or from the challenging situation. And I know that if you approach it sincerely and genuinely, you'll win customers. And one customer as an evangelist can be so much more impactful than one that, we've lost, right? So keep at it. And if are there any other final questions? I want everyone to be able to ask them. Shannon, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah. So I appreciate this a great deal. It was a lot of great reminders. In my previous position, I actually trained customer service, and I was hearing my own voice echoed back at me, and it's necessary right now. So thank you for that. But I do have a question that is something that sort of has developed through over time in COVID, which is kind of the political climate. And that is when you have a customer who is being really aggressive about, it could be anything, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, those types of things. I've been in this a while, so I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of, when somebody is just sort of overall frustrated and can kind of talk them down versus somebody who is being overtly aggressive and challenging to be challenging for challenging's sake. Sometimes people being very abusive with their language. However, some of my younger cohorts and younger employees who don't have that experience, long-term customer experience, their tolerance level for what they perceive or actually is abuse is different than maybe mine. And so how do I best communicate? Yeah, I don't know, it's okay to take this much, but not this much, or there's that area. I never want to put somebody in a position where they're feeling like threatened or, that sort of thing. So it's communicating to the employees where is that line?
That line doesn't usually start at this level. It starts here and it escalates.
Right.
So we teach a class on just de-escalating. So if you go back to some of the things we talked about, so if you focus on what the facts are and we stick behind the facts, well, oh, sir, we require masks here because it's a state mandate and our business needs to follow that. That statement can be said a couple of times, but the challenge questions are going to start like, well, a lot of people don't get, the virus if they get the vaccine. So those are all challenge questions. So the important thing is you have to get really good at compartmentalizing what's information seeking or business seeking. So I think that's just a skill that's not practiced. I have kids that are the age of your employees and they don't have that. They didn't grow up with that, right? So we have to sort of train them on that. And sometimes the training ground is here at the employment. So I think part of that is the practice. The biggest thing they can do is see you model that and then you're very deliberate about it, right? And then even afterward, you could do something called not feedback, but feed forward. Like, I think we're going to probably get some customers that may challenge us on this today. Here's a couple ways that we could go through addressing it. And then we can say, can you say that? Like, if your employees never said the words like, oh, helping you or solving this for you is the most important thing I'm going to do today, that sounds strange to them. But have them put them in their own words, or have them recite what the policy is, again, with no emotion. These are just the facts, right? And not like, well, that's what the state tells us to do, or my boss told me that. No, it's just the facts with nothing surrounding it. And then focus on the service, right? Redirect the attention of the aggression. And then at a certain point, it's obviously, I've had people that I've had to say, your profanity is getting in the way for me serving you. So I want to serve you, but your profanity's, in the way. Things like that, where you'll get good at those statements, but they need to see you model it, and they need to practice it. So all of us are not born out of the womb with being able to handle customer service situations. We learn that, right? And that's the piece where we have to sometimes do on-the-job training for some of these soft skills.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Also, if I can add, being a younger employee, I'm only 24. I've been in retail probably since I was 16, so I do know a lot about customer service. And I will say, even though I also don't tolerate a lot of disrespect or extreme aggression, I've worked with mothers who sometimes come in and they're pregnant and they're hormonal, which is very understandable. So I just talk calmly, very calmly, and then you'll notice that they'll also start to get calmer. Even though they probably don't even notice it and they're probably still angry, my voice comparing them to their voice, who's extremely high right now, will probably just eventually come down because they don't want to sound like they're screaming. Exactly. And also, just, I know the owners of my store right now, I kind of just hand it over and I'm like, well, if you want to speak to a manager, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. Or I'm sorry that you're not in an emotional state right now so that I can help you. We're like, just apologizing and saying, hey, hand it over to a manager because this clearly isn't working. Like, if you want to speak to a manager, email a manager, I will happily give you their contact information. And then sometimes they're like, well, dang, I kind of want this handled now, so let me just kind of behave. So totally, if you want to like back up your employees and say, hey, if someone's being way too aggressive, just send them my way, because that's how my system is working now. And again, with COVID and how we kind of got everyone back into their memberships, a lot of people were angry and calling us, and I was just like, hey, if you want to speak to the manager, please just let me know and I will definitely get them in contact with you. And they kind of just, calmed down after that.
Yeah, that you have to use whatever tactics seem to be in your tool bag, but all of them should be around kind of retaining the relationship. So at the end of it, you want more customers, you want them to be satisfied. And so whatever friction point is there, you might not have caused it. Like COVID has brought us a lot of friction. You're the owner of it though, nonetheless, because you need them and you want them to stay as your customers. So those are really good tactics. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you everybody for joining our monthly call this go around, and thank you so much, Salena, for being a part of this and wonderful session. I will send out the recorded link and the deck as a summary, so you can go back, rewatch, listen, share it forward with your employees if you feel like this would be beneficial, or any other business owners that you think would benefit from kind of today's discussion. And next month we will have a social media marketing expert joining us, kind of sharing some tips and tricks on how you can grow your followers as well as your engagement, which is even more important. So it's sort of taking a spin off of the customer service, but applying it in the social media space. And so stay tuned for the call details and information for next month's session. But thank you all and have a wonderful week, and reach out if you need anything.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.